Hey guys, it's Grim and welcome back to the channel. Yeah guys, so I got a little bit of a special video for you guys today. We're going to be looking at what are the best overall naval units to research in Conflict of Nations. Of course, this is going to be more of an opinionated kind of video. It'll be my opinion from my experience, playing the game and stuff like that. So just take that with a grain of salt. You might not like everything I say, but I'm just going to give you my opinion of the best kind of naval units to research in Conflict of Nations. So we're gonna go over all 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 right here. We got the Corvette, Frigate, Destroyer, Cruiser, and Aircraft Carrier. So we're just gonna look at each one, and we're gonna see which kind of one was the best situation for you in your game mode, so that you might want to research it and obviously use that unit in your game mode. So yeah, we'll take a look at each one, and I'll kind of explain why they're good for whatever situation you're in. And yeah, and just one quick thing I'll mention right here is that I'm actually doing a YouTube Shorts series for this game I'm in right now that I'm playing as Turkey. So if you guys want to check that out, just check the YouTube Shorts section of my channel. If you guys want to see this series going on, I really like this series. I'm about to get the solo win, hopefully. I just got to go past the Baltic states here, which have a bunch of land. So yeah. All right, guys, but let's get into it. First one I'm going to go over is the Corvette here. Now, this is actually the only one I have researched in this specific game, so it's the only one I'm using. And I'll tell you why it's kind of good and stuff. I'm going to pull up the Corvette's stats here. So I guess first thing we'll do is we'll talk about what kind of things you need in your cities to make these said naval units. So starting off with the Corvette, it's going to need a naval base level 2, arms industry level 2, and that'll probably be the same thing going forward. It'll probably be just higher the naval base. You could keep the arms industry level 1. You just need a level 1 at least to make it, but you just got to keep upgrading that naval base, obviously. So I'll just read this right here. The smallest class of warship in a modern fleet, often used as coastal or littoral combat vessel, defending shallow water areas against surface and submarine incursion, extremely vulnerable if used on the high seas. And that's actually going to be a main focus on this specific unit right here, the Corvette, is that they actually do get 50% HP when they are in the high seas. So you definitely want to have them in coastal waters. We'll take a look at what the main stats here for the what it does for every other type of unit in the game and all that stuff. So it has 1.5 attack damage on soft targets, so things like infantry and that. It does 1 damage to hard targets, so things like tanks, their support units. It has 1 defense against fixed wing targets, and then it has 1.5 against rotary wings, so helicopters and stuff like that. No attack or defense against missiles. But it does, of course, have attack against and defense against other surface vessels, and also has attack and defense against submarines, but not as good as the surface vessels one. So yeah, that's the kind of main stats it has for the Corvette. So now we'll just take a look down here. You can see it has half the hit points when it's in the high seas, so it has 10 hit points, but when it's in coastal waters, it's going to have 20 hit points, and that's very important. So yeah, the Corvette is kind of your starting naval unit. You only need a naval base level 2, so as long as you have a naval base level 2 and a level 1 arms industry at least, you'll be able to make this thing as low cost for the materials. Just going to need some supplies basically. So yeah, your Corvette is kind of going to be your starting naval unit right here. It's going to only need a naval base level 2, arms industry level 1. That's going to be the same thing for the rest of these, so you only need that arms industry level 1 at least. Then the naval bases will increase as we stated before. And yeah, it's obviously not the best naval unit in the game, but if all your cities are on the coast, and I say this a lot in my videos, if all your cities are on the coast, then you definitely got to make use of Navy, and every country gets the Corvette starting day 1 that you could research it. So yeah, I definitely recommend you guys use the Corvette if all your cities basically are on the coast. It's not really that good, but obviously if you need Navy ASAP, then definitely research this Corvette right here. But yeah, every country has the Corvette starting at day 1, so definitely make use of that, of course, if your cities are on the coast. But next one we will get into right here is the Frigate. So first things first, with the Frigate, we have the naval base level 2 and the arms industry level 1. So same thing as the Corvette that you'll need to make this thing. It's an agile fleet escort vessel, very effective at creating a solid anti-air envelope around friendly surface units. So yeah, the main thing that we'll talk about with this Frigate right here is its anti-air capabilities. It's going to have really good anti-air on it. Is, same thing with the Corvette here, except obviously it has the anti-air. You're gonna see it's gonna be probably the same things for the rest of these in terms of the features. So I'm not gonna go into the features as much, unless obviously it has a different feature that is not like the other ones. But obviously this one has a new one, or has a different one than the Corvette. It has the anti-air, of course. So it'll engage airborne targets at a range of 75. So that'll include fixed wing aircraft, rotary wing aircraft, and missiles as well. So yeah, it does 2 damage against soft targets and 1.5 against hard targets. And then it does 6 attack and defense against fixed wing targets, and then only 1 attack and 1 defense rating for the rotary wing targets, which will include things like helicopters and whatnot. And then it has 2.5 attack and defense for missiles. So if someone's trying to use missiles and they research them already, it'll do attack and defense them or against them. So, but the main thing is the defense right there. If you're coming against cruise missiles or stuff like that. And then it does 6 damage and defense against surface vessels, and then 3 attack and defense for submarines. So yeah, the Frigate is pretty interesting. It's kind of like a better Corvette with most of the stats here. It does some more damage against infantry and tanks and stuff like that. But the main thing here, obviously, is it has really good anti-air capability. So if you're coming against a country or a player that is using a lot of Air Force, if they have strike fighters, air superiority fighters, and stuff like that, then definitely make use of this. Honestly, if they have gunships or helicopters and stuff like that, this is not really going to aid in that, especially if they're using only fixed wing. So yeah, so this is only really good against fixed wing, so stuff like I just said before, the strike fighters and whatnot. So yeah, definitely make use of this if you're going against anything like that. And then it has some damage against missiles as well, but usually you research this early game and you're not gonna come against missiles very early game. So yeah, but it's just gonna be your better Corvette right here, but it's gonna take components to make. That's another thing I should mention. But yeah, I think the Frigate is pretty good. It has that really good anti-air capabilities. The only thing that changes in the high seas and the coastal waters is the speed value, so how fast you go there, but the hit points remain the same. And yeah, it's the Frigate for you guys. So next one we'll look at right now is the Destroyer. Now the Destroyer is one of my personal favorites to use in Conflict of Nations, and I'll explain that in a second. So yeah, the Destroyer is going to require a naval base level 3 instead of a naval base level 2, so it's going to require some more materials that you need to farm in to get this Destroyer here, and it's obviously going to cost more to research. But this is the cost right here to make it, not to research. Just have that in mind, guys. We're not going to be looking at that. We're just going to look at how much it costs to make these things. So obviously you're going to make multiple down the line. But of course, if you don't know, the main resources to research stuff in Conflict of Nations is the supplies, the rare materials, and the money. So just keep that in mind if you guys didn't already know that. But this is the cost to actually mobilize these things and get them ready into your game and use them. So this is the main thing right here. But yeah, it's a mid-sized fleet escort vessel protecting larger ships against both submarine and surface threats. So we'll take a look at the features here. Pretty much has the same features as the rest, and it also detects sonar, so it'll detect submarines as well. And we'll get into that. They're actually pretty good at submarines. So yeah, it says it reveals the stealth of the submarines. Otherwise, you can't see submarines unless you use destroyers and stuff like that. Of course, you'll know something's hitting you, but you won't be able to really see where it's at exactly. We'll look at the main stats right now. It does 2 damage against soft targets, so your infantry and stuff like that, as well as towed artillery, transport trucks. You guys see the rest right there. And then it does 2 damage against hard targets, and then it does 2 defense against fixed wing targets, and then 2 against gunships and helicopters and stuff like that. So only does defense, it doesn't attack them back. So no anti-air right here. Does defense against missiles, so not really that important right there either. But then it does 8 damage and defense to surface vessels. So you guys should keep that in mind. This is a really, really good naval unit to use early game against other naval units. So just keep that in mind. It's pretty good damage off rip. And then 6.5 damage and defense against submarines as well. They're really, really good against submarines as well. So yeah, that's the Destroyer for you guys. I really, really like the Destroyer, and I'm gonna tell you guys why right now. You can get it day 2 in your game. Obviously you're gonna need the naval base level 3, so it's gonna cost more resources. But say if you're on or if you're playing as a country such as United Kingdom, Ireland, where a lot of their cities here are on the coast, then you definitely want to make use of stronger naval units as soon as you can get them, as long as you're not getting attacked. But yeah, if you're like a city like Ireland or something like here, where all your cities, or most of them at least, are on the coast, then definitely research Corvette as soon as possible, as well as destroyers, because you really want to make use of a navy when all your cities are on the coast, not only to defend them with your navy, but attack other places as well, because there are probably going to be other places you could take over that have their coast themselves. So definitely make use of a navy if you have a lot of coastal cities. We'll get back into research right here. But yeah, I just really like the destroyer. It's really good damage against submarines and other vessels. Has 2 damage against infantry and tanks, so it's really nice. That's what I really recommend you guys use in most of your games, honestly. If you could research that later in your days, you could definitely make use of this later in the game. So say if, day 7, day 10 or something like that, and you want to have a navy at that point just in case, then definitely research the destroyer. And also is a big reason to research this thing, because it actually gets into this thing. And this thing right here is very important because it is the cruiser. So we'll talk about the cruiser right now, guys. The cruiser I like a lot as well. So first things first, we'll see what it takes to make these things. So you'll need a naval base level 4 in your cities, as well as at least an arms industry level 1 to make these things and mobilize them. So you're gonna need a naval base level 4, not a naval base level 3. So you gotta do a lot more kind of resource management and just grind for more resources. It is the largest and most dangerous surface vessel in any fleet besides the aircraft carrier, predominantly used as a platform for cruise missiles, artillery, and torpedoes. So this one's going to be pretty interesting, guys. The cruiser is just like a big hunk of steel. It has a lot of HP. It's very good in the waters. We'll take a look at some of its features right here. Attack range of 75. It does have some anti-air capabilities. It actually can launch missiles, which is pretty interesting. As soon as you get this research, you can launch missiles with it immediately. So if you're definitely making missiles, I really recommend you guys use this, especially if you don't have a navy and you guys already have missiles or you're trying to get missiles. Definitely make use of the cruiser because it's an all-around really good naval unit to use. And on top of that, as soon as you have it researched and mobilized, you can start using missiles as soon as possible. So it's really nice. So we'll take a look at the main stats right here. So it's going to be 3 damage to soft targets, so stuff like infantry, and then 2 damage to hard targets. And you'll notice that it only does 1 more damage against infantry compared to the destroyer, but it also does the same as the destroyer in terms of hard targets. So pretty interesting there. Only more damage against infantry and stuff like that. And then it does 2 attack and 2 defense from fixed wing, so not nearly as good as the Frigate and stuff like that with its anti-air, but at least it has some anti-air. It actually has pretty good anti-air against helicopters, just a little bit more than the fixed wing, so it's not bad against helicopters, at least defending and attacking from them. And then it does 1 damage and defense for missiles, and then it has 10 attack and defense against surface vessels. So yeah, that's a really nice stat right there. So against any other naval unit, it's going to have really good attack and defense. It's just really strong against any other naval unit. And then it has 2 attack and defense from submarines. So it's actually going to be weak to submarines. So if someone's using cruisers and you don't have anything researched in your navy, then definitely make use of submarines. So that'll be a really good thing to use submarines against if someone only has cruisers. So you see there's some gaps here. There's some ways to go around other things that your enemy is researching, as long as you have the right things and you're going against the right stats and stuff like that. But yeah, and last thing we'll look at right here is the high seas and coastal waters. It's going to go faster in the high seas actually, which is pretty interesting. It'll go slower in the coastal waters, but it's going to have the same amount of hit points in the high seas as well as the coastal waters. So yeah, a pretty interesting one here, guys. The cruisers are really strong against any other naval unit. If you are going against submarines and you're using cruisers, then definitely try to research something else like a destroyer maybe, or just any other type of submarine, maybe if you want to battle them with submarines. But I'd recommend a destroyer in that case just because they have really good attack and defense against submarines, but these guys are weak to submarines. But yeah, the cruiser is really nice. Another feature that I really like is that I can launch missiles immediately. But yeah, if you guys need a really strong navy as soon as possible, and you guys research destroyer first, because you're actually going to need to research destroyer first in order to research the cruiser, and you guys should keep that in mind. It's the same thing with the Corvette and the Frigate. You need to research the Corvette first before you can research the Frigate. And it's the same thing with the destroyers and the cruisers. So yeah, definitely make use of that knowledge, guys. But yeah, I really like the cruise missile that it could launch immediately. Has some anti-air, which I also like. Has a lot of hit points, and it does really good damage to other naval units. So yeah, this is kind of probably, in my opinion, going to be your overall best naval unit. But then again, each kind of naval unit, as you guys see, has their roles. With the Frigate, it's really good at anti-air. With the destroyers, it's good against submarines. So the cruiser is really, really nice in terms of overall of what it does. So I think this is the overall best, but then again, you know, you need a lot of resources to make it. You need a lot of resources that you have to put in for the naval base. So take that all into consideration, but the naval or the cruiser here is really, really powerful. And so next up, we're going to look at the aircraft carrier, and this is personally one of my favorites. I haven't used it a whole lot, honestly, but when I do use it, I really, really do enjoy using it. It's a lot of fun to use. So we'll take a look at the aircraft carrier now, guys. But first thing we'll look at is what it's going to cost to make. So it's going to need a max level naval base, which is naval base level 5, and of course that arms industry. So yeah, you're going to need a really, really high level naval base. And the next thing we'll actually look at here is very, very important too. It's actually going to cost less to actually make it compared to the cruiser. The cruiser is actually going to cost more to make in terms of only components. So that's another thing to keep in mind, that it really shows you that the cruiser takes a lot to make in terms of resources. But it's going to take a little bit less resources than the cruiser, but it's going to get 3,200 components right there, 1,000 manpower, so actually a lot of manpower for a naval unit right there. And it's actually also going to include 750 rare materials, so that's another thing that you guys should be aware about. And then of course you have your electronics and your money right there. So yeah, we'll just read this off real quick. It is the largest combat ship in the fleet. Serving as a seagoing air base, this vessel dramatically increases the nation's global power projection capability. Being a primary target, the carrier needs to be protected against any kind of threats at all times. So yeah, we'll look into the features right here. It has radar signature, of course. It has anti-air capabilities, which is pretty nice. We'll get into that later and have the stats for it. And then it has radar detection. So yeah, guys, now we'll look at the stats of the aircraft carrier. It's actually going to have no attack and defense for both soft targets and hard targets here. So definitely take that into account. You're definitely going to need to combine the aircraft carrier with multiple other naval units as one stack to make use so this thing doesn't get destroyed, because it's not going to, you know, attack or defend for itself in terms of ground units. But it does actually have some anti-air capabilities, as we mentioned before. It has 2 attack and 2 defense for fixed wings, so not really crazy anti-air, honestly, but at least it has a little bit of some. And it has 4 attack and defense for rotary wing targets, so stuff like helicopters, which is actually not bad. I believe the cruiser had 3 attack and defense, so this has a little bit a better attack and defense for helicopters. And then it actually has 2 attack and defense for missiles, and then it's only going to do 1 attack and defense for surface vessels, and then 2 attack and defense for submarines. So yeah, it's going to be really, really, really weak against other naval units as well as submarines. And the last bit of information we'll look at is kind of the stuff it does on the high seas and the coastal waters. So it's going to go a little bit faster in the high seas. It's going to have the same amount of HP in the high seas and the coastal waters. It's just going to go a little bit slower here in the coastal waters. So yeah, the aircraft carrier, man, it's in the name. It carries your aircraft. When you start researching it, I think actually it gets more capacity as you research it. At least I'm pretty sure. Let's actually take a look here if I'm right. So by this one, it should have more capacity. Yeah, so it has a 15 capacity for the 3rd tier of the aircraft carrier, and it's going to have a 10 capacity for that 2nd tier right there. But it's going to start off with 5 max capacity for the amount of aircraft you could actually land on it and have on the aircraft carrier. And that's going to be obviously the main thing with the aircraft carrier. You really kind of just want to use it as like a mobile fortress with all your aircraft, and definitely have other ships, you know, defending with it. Otherwise, you know, if the aircraft carrier gets shot down, you know, all your other aircraft go with it, and that goes all your resources that you spent. So definitely have this thing really, really well defended if you use it. But it can really, really be nice, because say if you're attacking a country, right, and this is the country, right, and you have the aircraft carrier and you have all your other naval units, and you push first with the naval units, you're doing well, say you are doing well, and then you push through with your aircraft carrier behind that, and then you're using your strike fighters to hit this city, hit that city, you know, stuff like that. It could be a really, really, really good strategy. So yeah, the aircraft carrier is, you know, obviously it's going to take a lot to research. It's going to take a lot of materials to get that naval base level 5. It's probably going to be something you get in the mid to late game, but I highly recommend it. If you guys defend it well, it can really be used really well in your games, and not a lot of players really, you know, use it. So if you are able to make these, then it's really, really cool. And yeah, if your enemy doesn't have one of these and you do, you definitely have a slight edge, as long as they don't have like missiles and you don't, or some other stuff, obviously. But yeah, if you're making use of this and you really do it smart, it can really be a nice unit here. So yeah, the aircraft carrier is really cool, a really interesting unit. So yeah, those are my thoughts for each naval unit in Conflict of Nations. I kind of gave some information depending on what kind of situation you are, what you should use for your game, what you should research. And we also looked at other information too, like the amount of resources it's going to take to make these things. So you guys should definitely take that into account as well. But yeah, it's kind of my thoughts for all of these units in Conflict of Nations. I really highly recommend you guys get the Destroyer, especially if you're, a lot of your homeland cities are on the coast, and definitely make use of the Destroyer as soon as possible, because then you also get the Cruiser later. But yeah, if all your cities are on the coast, then definitely get the Corvette as soon as possible, and then eventually get the Destroyer. Obviously, if you're going against countries that use a lot of strike fighters or any type of fixed wing targets, then definitely make use of the Frigate. So yeah, each kind of naval unit has its role here. Obviously, with the Frigate having really good anti-air, the Corvette just kind of a really good starter naval unit if you really need a navy as soon as possible. If all your homeland cities are on the coast. The Destroyer is really good overall. It has really good attack and defense against submarines, so it's really good against submarines. It's its main thing. Obviously, it's a bigger vessel, so it's going to do more damage to other stuff overall as well. And then the Cruiser is kind of the same thing. Not really good against submarines though, because the Destroyer is, and has some anti-air also, which the Destroyer I believe doesn't. We'll take a look at that. Yeah, they only have defense, while the Cruiser right here has attack against air targets. That's another thing you guys should take into account. So the Cruiser is really good overall if you can get it. But you need to research that Destroyer first. So just make use of that Cruiser if you need it. And then the aircraft carrier right here is really nice too. Obviously, it's a mid to late game thing, but if you can use it, and if you use it in a good strategy, it can really be really good as well. So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I have plenty of more Conflict of Nations content on my channel, so definitely like and subscribe if you guys want to see more stuff like this. And yeah, I really hope this video helped, guys. I hope it gave you some insight into each of these naval units in the game. Of course, a lot of this is my opinion, and I'm just gonna kind of give you situations that you should use them in, and take into account all the resources you should have for mobilizing these things. But yeah, I really hope this video helped, and thank you guys for watching, and Grim out.